So we've got Venom, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Doctor Strange, Fantastic Four, Cap, Thor, Silver Surfer, Iron Man, Blade, Black Panther, Sentry. All of these guys are out to fight this guy, but guess who's nowhere the to be found?
The Celestials said we weren't allowed to.
Figures. Hi, and welcome back to the Inside of My Head, where I've been devouring everything I can find on one of Marvel's most powerful supervillains, possibly the most powerful. He's a genocidal maniac who loves mayhem and bloodshed and will stop at nothing until all life has been snuffed out. Let's talk about Knull. So I've just finished King in Black, which honestly left me pretty f***ing breathless considering everything that goes down in here. King in Black is the culmination of a 3-year Venom saga where Marvel have raised the stakes for the entire Marvel universe, as Knull, who broke out of his prison on planet Klyntar at the end of Absolute Carnage, finally arrives to Earth. It's a novel that features many of the familiar faces, Wolverine, Cyclops, but also Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Sentry puts in an appearance, Blade is in here, but the whole thing centers on Venom and Eddie Brock. But what surprised me most is that the majority of these superheroes I've just mentioned, they're completely outclassed and rendered almost obsolete by the threat that they face. But who is Knull? Let's go back to the beginning. So as the Celestials spread life throughout the multiverse, they encroached into the Abyss, the domain of pure nothingness described as an existential chasm between the destroyed previous universe and the prime reality that followed. The Abyss was ruled over by Knull, who up until this point seemed happy to slumber in this area of space. But the Celestials' intrusion, spreading light and life, angered him to the point of madness.
Fucking light and life!
And he vowed to devour all of the light in the universe so that darkness would smother all once again. So he created a necro sword, a blade made from death itself that he named the All Black, a weapon of such devastating power that he was able to use it to kill and decapitate a Celestial. He somehow used the head as a forge. So, I guess he scooped out the brains, and the sword soaked up the celestial energies, which made it even more powerful and gave him a connection to the Celestials' cosmic energies, which became one of the main sources of his power. He also wears a suit of armor made of the black fluid called the Living Abyss that can shift shape and give him added protection from the usual threats of fire and sonic waves. Anyway, for years, Knull waged war on the light, extinguishing stars, taking control and enslaving other gods and devouring entire civilizations.
Wow, this guy actually really looks like Knull.
Until his sword was stolen and he was stranded on a nameless planet. Basically how this happened was that this alien guy called Gore witnessed Knull fighting a god clad in golden armor in the sky. When they fell to Earth, the All Black bonded to Gore and he killed the gold god. Gore went on to become Gore the God Butcher. If you know the Thor comics, you'll know him already. And he went on a quest to kill as many gods as he could find. I might do a video on Gore the God Butcher just because he's the bad guy in the new Thor movie. But somehow this led Knull stranded on the planet, and stuck there, searching for another way to inflict damage on the light, he began experimenting with his powers and found that he could create symbiotes that could bond with the planet's indigenous life. These, of course, would become the Klyntar. At some point, he also created an army of symbiote dragons, which traveled across space, conquering worlds in the name of the darkness and killing any life they came across. Now, these guys probably deserve their own video, but let's just say for now that they are huge, black, ferocious beasts that can not only fly in space, but can also merge together to form a giant kaiju-sized devil behemoth called Chiyu. Check this guy out. They traveled far and wide, 2 of them even reaching Earth, which inspired many of our dragon-related myths and legends. But of course, Earth was under the protection of a certain Thor Odinson. Thor killed one of the dragons and it crashed to its death in the North Sea, and he hit the other so hard it cut the connection between Knull and all of the other symbiotes.
Enjoy your freedom, little black piranha sperms.
Now this is hugely important because disconnected from the hive mind, those other symbiotes were forced to find other hosts to bond with to survive. And from them, inherited traits and characteristics, like conscience and nobility and things like that. And seeing the horrors of Knull's plan, they turned on him, eventually trapping him on planet Klyntar, an artificial world created by Knull to serve as his throne world. Anyway, centuries later, after the events of Absolute Carnage, see my Carnage video for more details on that, Knull was awoken and freed from his prison, destroying planet Klyntar in the process. He arrived on Earth in the body of one of these, and yes, these are Celestials that he's managed to take over and swamp in living darkness, which could be the ultimate demonstration of how powerful this guy truly is. Like, I would have loved to have seen how this played out exactly. Like, did he sneak up on them, or did he just prove to be more powerful in a straight up fight? But as far as I know, this isn't actually shown anywhere. But these symbiote celestials aren't the only weapon in his arsenal. He also brought a massive swarm of symbiote dragons, but as usual, his most potent weapon was the symbiotic fluid that he coated the entire planet Earth in. Without being able to take a single step without being swamped in the stuff, he easily overwhelms certain members of the X-Men and the Avengers and adds them to his symbiotic army. And as well as this, he grabs Sentry, who is Marvel's version of Superman, flies him into orbit, and casually just rips him in half. And it was only really Thor that was able to hold his own against Knull. Actually, that said, Storm put up a pretty good fight too, and I think that's because both her and Thor can produce lightning and therefore light. Eventually, Storm is overcome as she's enveloped in a huge mass of symbiotic fluid in the shape of a giant hand.
What the fuck?
So anyway, Knull finds Venom and Eddie Brock, and taking them to his lair atop of the Empire State Building, rips the Venom symbiote from Eddie's body and drops him from the top of the tower, twisting up his body like a pretzel and putting him into a coma. Turns out that Knull wants Eddie's son, Dylan, who has inherited symbiote powers from his father and has become kind of like a one-of-a-kind hybrid. I'm not entirely sure how this happened. I guess Eddie got his breeding on while Venom was inside his body, which is kind of freaky. But yeah, I'm still going to look into how that happened exactly. Anyway, Dylan Brock has the ability to do this and telekinetically blast the symbiote off of its host. I don't fucking know what noise it makes. Then he manages to free a number of the Avengers and the X-Men, while Thor manages to get the upper hand by landing a blow so fucking ferocious that it rips Knull's jaw clean off.
Ow!
The closest that Knull has ever come to defeat. The Dark God gets even more serious and awakens the Celestials under his control and orders them to destroy the planet before ramming the All Black through Thor's chest. And it's not until Jean Grey gets inside Knull's mind that she realizes that he is not the primordial darkness itself. And just as the primordial darkness chose Knull to be its representative, the light can do the same thing too. And that's when the Silver Surfer guides this, which is the god of light, drawn to Earth and Eddie's dead body by the sorrow of his morning sun, bonds with Eddie, bringing him back from the dead and turning him into this. Now this has been referred to as Cosmic Venom, but I don't know if that's an official name or not. Reed Richards refers to this thing as the Enigma Force, but also as Captain Universe, so I don't know what his name is. But he, with the power of the God of Light, is able to summon Thor's hammer and fuse it with the Silver Surfer's board, which at the time was in the shape of a sword, to create this, an enormous glowing battle axe which carves through symbiote dragons like a knife through butter. The power of the God of Light also allows Venom to fly and even dissolve the All Black, before incredibly chopping the head off one of the symbiote-infected Celestials. And you know, when you consider that these things' necks must be the size of your average skyscraper or something, that's a pretty big... That's kind of like a lot of chopping power right there. You know what though? Big necks freak me out. It's like one big long torso with a couple of little arms on the sides and a head sitting on top. And how big neck people don't all talk like I just don't know. And why I'm talking about this, I just don't know that either. Eventually, Cosmic Venom, or whatever you want to call him, uses the axe to carve through Knull's symbiotic suit of armor, ripping it off him before dropping him from the top of a skyscraper, much like Knull had done to Eddie earlier. But of course, this wasn't enough to stop the God of Darkness, so Venom flew him up into space, melted his face off with some cosmic energy breath, and then dissolved him to atoms in the furnace core of the sun. Poof. The story ends with Eddie managing to separate his son from the primordial darkness within him before the God of Light leaves him and Venom, and they become the new King in Black. Whether this is a true death for Knull, only time will tell, as it's said that he can never truly be killed, as darkness itself is an ever-present in our universe, right? It is. I mean, turn the lights off, you'll see what I mean. But let's recap Knull's abilities, which all stem from his ability to create a seemingly infinite amount of living abyss. He's honed and experimented with this stuff for billions of years, and not only created the symbiotes and dragons, but other creatures too, such as Mr. E and the Void Knight, a being created to kill the Silver Surfer. One thing I haven't really spoken about yet is the hive mind that connects all of these creatures, that Knull is at the center of, which allows him to mentally influence and dominate symbiotes even when he is vast distances away. This mental connection can even allow him to remote pilot symbiotes and connect and disconnect them from their hosts. And at one point he even creates this throne for him to sit on and connect to the hive mind like Eddie does here. Why a god would need to plug in like this, I don't know. To me it just seems like a story device to allow Eddie to access the hive, but hey, it looks cool. Like, I think I've shared my thoughts on hive minds on this channel before. To me, any weakness within the hive mind automatically gets shared as well. So what's the point? As well as the fact that there's a high risk of infiltration. Like, if somebody manages to, plant a virus in the hive mind, you're totally vulnerable. So hive mind. Them. So we know that Knull is strong, but how strong exactly? I already spoke about how he dealt with most of Earth's superheroes without even lifting a finger, then easily ripped Sentry in half, Sentry being regarded as one of the strongest beings on Earth. He slapped the Silver Surfer around after a long-running battle, and he's no pushover. But what really surprised me was how he made the Celestials look an absolute joke, which makes this guy's appearance as a skinny old guy all the more ironic. So how strong is Knull exactly? Well, even in comparison to other gods, he's fucking up there. So what else we got here? Let's take a look. The grey-haired geezer god could also smush symbiotes together to form other sort of hybrid symbiotes. Check this out, it's f***ing gross. Now the reason he does this is that in his search for Dylan Brock, he takes over Riot, Agony, Lasher, and Phage. I mean, of course he does, he's far too busy to be looking for this kid himself, right? And when they're challenged by Shriek of all people, he combines them together to form this monstrosity. And the design of this thing is awesome. Look at it. It's just a mess of madness of mouths and fangs and tails and And it can even make like a whip strand thing out of its own teeth, which is just And this thing is only defeated when Shriek kind of allows it to absorb her and then explodes it from the inside. Boom! Knull has also been known to have reached back through time to resurrect Mr. E, which was one of his early experiments at manipulating the living Abyss. And he resurrected him in an adventure where he tried to steal the ebony blade from the Black Knight. But you know what, that's another story. Point is, he can turn back time. Of course, we've spoken about how he's vulnerable to the light, but he's also vulnerable to certain cosmic energies. So again, where the fuck were the Eternals during all of this? God only knows. Like, where did this guy go after he blew himself up and became an entity made entirely of cosmic energies? Having a guy like that around might have come in handy. Like, if Knull is vulnerable to cosmic energy, then this guy could have killed him with a cuddle. There's also a chance that Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy has developed powers that could maybe combat Knull. Remember that Star-Lord turns out to be special when he finds out that his dad is a Celestial. Planet fight! Also cannibalism. And there's one storyline where he learns to use something called the Universal Radiant Energy and send out massive energy blasts and through his guns. Yeah, his guns. Another potential weakness is that we see at one point that any damage inflicted on a symbiote while he's controlling it telepathically will manifest on Knull's own body. But then, when you consider how quickly this guy regenerates, it's probably less of a weakness, more of a mild inconvenience. There is also another way that Knull can be deprived of a large part of his power. As I said, when he forged the All Black in the Severed Head at the Celestial, he somehow got a connection to all that power. But in one storyline, that connection is severed by the Valkyries, which severely weakens him. Apparently, though, he was still strong enough to overpower Thor, even having all that power cut off. So with a being this powerful, with only one or two real weaknesses, where do we go from here? Because it's pretty certain that this death at the end of King in Black wasn't a true death, that it was only just his body that was destroyed. Writer Donny Cates even stated that Knull was pretty much unkillable, I guess, because the darkness itself is an ever-present in the universe, I guess. So it's very likely that he'll be back, and if this was just the first round, how the hell are they going to deal with him next time round? Perhaps Tony Stark will come up with some God-killer armor-style machine built from ancient celestial technology, or perhaps the one above all himself has to get involved. It's also possible that the Ebony Blade might be able to hurt or even kill Knull, as Mr. E was trying to steal it from the Black Knight to prevent it from being used against his master, and as the blade was shown to be able to hurt Mr. E, it's been theorized that as he's made of the same material as Knull, it might be able to hurt him too. And we know that the Ebony Blade is definitely able to kill the symbiote dragons, at least. But regardless, in a storyline that raises the stakes this high and ropes in so many Marvel characters, it's going to be hard to top next time around. I mean, without it getting ridiculous anyway. Anyway, you guys, I think I've said enough about Knull for now. I'm going to leave off of the Marvel stuff for a while, but if you are a Marvel fan, do not worry. I'm sure I'll be looking at some Spider-Man related stuff around the time that No Way Home comes out. Anyway, in the meantime, I need to take my meds, so please, get out of my head, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!